Hey there, good friends of YouTube. Today we're going to be working on my 2015 Ram truck. There's nothing wrong with it today. It's kind of raining outside, and there's not a lot I can do outside, so I thought I'd just do a quick video here on an upgrade that we're going to want to do. So let's get in there and take a look and see what we're going to do today. So what we're going to work on today is this radio, and there's nothing wrong with it other than it's very basic. I mean, it just has AM, FM. It does have XM satellite radio, which I don't subscribe to. It does have USB sticks you can stick in and get some extra music. But other than that, it is very, very basic. There is no hands-free calling or anything like that. No Bluetooth connectivity to my phone. So I wanted to do something with that today and see if we can get this upgraded with something that's a little bit more updated with navigation, Bluetooth, hands-free, all that good stuff. So stick with me and we'll get started on this. Okay, friends, so we're going to look at what we got here to get this radio installed. This is a wiring harness adapter that allows us to connect to the OEM connector that's currently on the radio and break that out so that we can get our new radio installed. This is a faceplate here that should allow us to connect a 2-DIN radio right into our stock faceplate on the Dodge Ram pickup truck. And finally, the radio. This is an Atoto A6 radio that I selected. So let's get this bad boy unboxed and take a look at it. But first, let's get a good look at this watch here. Yeah, that's an Orient black face open heart design. If you guys want to see more on this, I have a full review on it. Somewhere up here you should be able to see that. Let's get going. So inside your box, we have got a microphone here that can be used for the hands-free. Some metal brackets to get this thing connected. This is a GPS module, it looks like. 1, 2 USB ports. Here is a breakout connection for, it looks like inputs for video, a couple cameras, and maybe the microphone here. Here's the standard wiring harness loom, which we'll be connecting our thing to. What is this? This is antennas. This is the Bluetooth. This also has Wi-Fi, so there's a Wi-Fi antenna there. The parking brake connector there, and RCA input. This is a rear camera input here. So it also came with 2 of these line level outputs. So if you're connecting this to an amp, you can convert it right there, and it has adjustments right there for your levels. Faceplate, instruction stuff here, and warranty card information. And let's take a look here and see what we got in the box. Okay, there we go. She's a beaut. As you can see, this is a 2-DIN touchscreen made by Atoto. It has power and volume buttons here on the bottom, home button. This is a Android radio, so it's got Android OS on here. It's got 2 gigs of RAM, 2 gigs of onboard memory for the ROM, and 32 gigs of RAM for storage. It's got all the connectors and everything that you could possibly need. This was fairly inexpensive. And I want to tell you why I ordered this particular radio. So there is a ton of radios that you can get on Amazon, and that's where I picked up this unit. And there's a lot of Chinese radios that are super spec heavy, like lots of memory, lots of CPU, lots of all those things. But where they all fail generally, I think what you'll find, and I find this in a lot of Chinese electronics, is the user interface is pretty poor. Like, they don't spend a lot of time developing a user interface. Although the unit will have a lot of be spec heavy, the user interface will be poor, and that's where they kind of break down. This company, Atoto, has been around a while, and they make high-end radios. This is probably their budget line of radios. I think this cost about $190. They had a $10 off coupon on Amazon, which brought me to $180, and then I had like $40 in points for my Amazon card, so that brought this down to $140 to my house. Seemed like a pretty good deal. I wanted something that was an Android-based system so that I can get Google Play on here and download apps to this unit. I do intend to add TPS monitoring, tire pressure monitoring to this unit and have it in here and not a separate unit. Also, I can use Google Maps and all that other stuff. You'll see when we get this in the car, this is actually going to connect to my hotspot that we use for camping. So I'll always have internet access to this unit. So I'm pretty excited about that. All right, guys, so we've got everything set up here. I've just connected the power and the accessory power and the ground to my 12-volt power supply. We'll go ahead and turn it on now and see if she's working. I always like to give this a little test before I put them in the car. You know, you sure hate to tear your whole car apart and the thing's not even working. So looks like it's booting up just fine. This supposedly has a 2-second boot time. I think that's after it's completely booted for the first time and the accessory power's off, and then you turn the key on, then it'll wake up from sleep mode as long as it's getting constant 12-volt power. So don't be alarmed by how long it's taking to boot up right now. I do believe that's how it works in the future. And it looks like it's going just fine. It came right up to the radio. I'm going to click the home button here. I don't have any speakers or anything like that hooked up. This all looks great. You can see Google Maps here. Play Store's there. Oh, here's Google Maps too. So I don't know. We'll get it in there and see what it looks like. Okay, first things first. As I was reading about this connector online, on certain vehicles, these ground and accessory power are swapped on this wiring harness that comes from Amazon. So the first thing we need to do, you could either wire this backwards, meaning you can put the yellow wire onto the black or the black wire onto the yellow. I don't like that. I want this to be, you know, all the way from the connector in with the correct wiring. So what we need to do is we need to just swap these two in the harness. The best way to do that is to take your, just one of these little micro screwdrivers right there, you can see. I'm going to push it in here into this, to the piece here on the top. We're going to push it in, and then as we're pushing it in, we're going to pull it out. There you go. You can see it's out. We'll do it again on the yellow one. So if we look closely, right here's the yellow one. I'm going to stick this right here on the top in the little hole above it. Let's see if we can get this to focus. There we go. Little hole above it. I hope you guys can see this. We're going to just push that bad boy right in there. We're going to push it in all the way. There it goes. And then now we're going to pull it as we're removing this. And it should just slide right out. There we go. You can see it slid out. Now what you're going to have to do here before you stick it back in is essentially what we've done is we've push the little tab down. That tab needs to get moved in the up position. So right here, I'm just going to grab that little tab and I'm going to lift it up. That way it can relock into place when we reinstall it. Okay, now you should be able to see that little tab is now up so it can lock back into place. So we'll go ahead and stick that in now, swapping them. Okay, there's the yellow one, it's in. We're going to go until it locks, and there it's locked. We'll give it a little pull, it's all good. And then now the black one, we've swapped it into this location. Oh, let me make sure I did the tab. And you can see the tab there is in the up position. We'll push this one in. Okay, there it is, it's snapped in. Okay, so now this should all be good. Make sure that you check your wiring harnesses to see if there's any swaps going on there with your ground and power. Had you plug this in, you'd be either burning up a radio, but more than likely a fuse. On the Atoto, it has a fuse right here for the power, so this would have burned up, and you might have been thinking, oh, why isn't this thing turning on? Only to find out that this was wired separately at the factory. They do talk about this on Amazon, so just look out for that. Okay, so here we go. We've got everything kind of laid out here. What I'm going to do first is, you can see I put a little piece of heat shrink here on the end of this harness here and run the power wire through there. We'll figure out what this is for a little bit later, but for now, just know that we've put that on there. Same on this loom here. This is the one that came with the radio. There's a little piece of heat shrink tubing here, and I've pulled these 3 wires out that I think need to be used later on down the road, potentially. There's a power antenna connector which, you know, if a guy ever needs to get an accessory power that's switched, there's one here we can use. Here's the dimmer for the screen. I'm not sure where that's at, so I'm going to leave that out. And then there's one here for the rear camera. I'm not sure if that provides power or what. So I'm going to leave those three out because I think we'll probably use those down the road. Everything else I passed through this heat shrink tubing, and this should be all the connections we need. The first thing I'm going to do is take the items I know we're not going to use. I do not have steering wheel controls. So this is the audio cable for the steering wheel controls, and then there's a couple more steering wheel control cables here. This brown one, this orange, and this orange one. So I know I'm not going to use those, so we're just going to stick those in the loom. I'm going to go ahead and just heat shrink these up so they're not going to cause us any issues. I'm going to combine these with the audio jack here, just so we don't have any accidental shorts down the road in the car while it's vibrating and doing all the happy things it's going to do. But if we ever move this radio to another car, we'll have access to this stuff here. Okay, there we go. That's all shrunk up. So that leaves us the items that I know we're going to be using for the deal. So we'll go ahead and just start putting these together. Okay, so next step here is we're just going to go ahead and load up all our heat shrink tubes. Okay, we've got all our heat shrinks on here, so we can begin the process of soldering this together. If you guys haven't soldered before, I'll just run you through a super quick deal. This is how I learned to do it. I don't know if this is right or not, but this is the way I do it. I'll take it, and let me zoom in just a little bit. What I'll do is I'll take the one end of the splice and I'll fan it out. See, it's fanned out right there. Then I'll take the other end of the splice and do the same and fan it out. Okay, you can see there that's fanned out. Then I'll take the two fanned pieces and I'll intermingle them together about halfway. You can see they're all intermingled now. Then we'll close it up and we'll twist them together. There is a lineman splice, and then there's this splice here. I prefer this splice. It holds just a little bit better. All electricity current runs on the outside of each strand and not down the middle of it, so that helps us get a nice little deal. Then what we're going to do is we're just going to put a little bit of flux on there, just so it'll get down into the bad boy. See there? And finally, we're going to pre-tin our iron just a little bit here. Hold it on there and let it heat up and put it in from the top. Make sure that soaks all the way into the whole thing. And it has. And then we'll pull the heat shrink tubing over the top of it. We'll let it cool down just a hair. And here's our heat shrink that we've already put on. It's kind of up in there. Didn't want it to get hot. Okay. We'll just slide that right over. And then finally we'll shrink the heat shrink. I actually have a funny story too I want to tell you guys about my soldering setup. So if you'll notice, my soldering iron here is a Weller. This is a WES 51. I don't remember when I bought this, but it was like 18, 19 years ago. My son's in college now. But when back in the day, I did a lot of electrical work, electronics work, and you can see the splice right here. And this thing's like all of, oh, I don't know, let's call it a foot, maybe a little less, this wire. One day I'm doing some work on the kitchen table, and my son came and he had found I don't know, some cutters, you know, and he just started cutting the hell out of this wire. And so anyway, I was pretty upset at the time, but I got it all spliced up in some old electrical tape. I never did replace this deal, and every time I use this, I think about that time. I mean, literally every time. So it's got some sentimental value. Interesting enough, when he got older, actually in the last couple years, and I was teaching him how to solder and do this kind of stuff, and he asked me about this. He said, "Dad, why is this thing so short?" I mean, it's short enough to where it's a pain in the ass to use because you really have to be close to what you're doing. So I told him that story, and we both got a good laugh out of it. So anyway, I'm going to keep going here. All right, guys, so you can see everything's done here. We've got all this kind of put together, and you'll remember I put these two big pieces there. I just like to bring these over the top here. Just provide a little bit of protection to the ends of these solder joints. There we go. We'll just bring this together here. Okay, that's all together now. We've got a nice loom here. I've got these extras here, and since I don't think I'm going to use these, I'm probably going to put just a piece of heat shrink tubing over the three of these. I'm not sure about the dimmer, so that's the one that I need to probably watch out for. But we'll go ahead and get this in the car first and see if we can't get the radio up and running, and let's get out to the car. All right, guys, so next up we want to take this bezel off here. There's a couple screws up here, and you might check in this here. I heard that there might be a screw in there. In my case, I don't have one. We're just going to grab this and give her a little yank. There we go. Okay. All right. Next up, we're going to take these screws off right here. Next up, we'll just pull this out and unplug it from the back. Okay, next up we want to install this faceplate on the radio. So we're just going to drop the radio right in here. So I'll do that right now. Okay, so now we've got this thing mounted inside our bracket here. I'm just going to do a quick test fit and make sure there's a bracket back here in the back. This should be short enough to fit in there, so we're just going to test fit it real quick, make sure it's good. And it is just fine. Okay, so next up we need to hook up the wiring, so I'll do that. Okay, we're going to start here with the antenna wire. And that clips in right here. And it only goes in one direction. There she goes. All right, next up we'll hook in our wiring harness here, the one that we built up. This only goes in one direction. There we go. Snap it in. That is done. And then let me see what else is in here. There's a USB connection here that goes down to the center console, but this won't work in this scenario, so that won't get connected. We need to run our accessory wire down and get it connected to our key ignition cigarette lighter, so I'll do that now. Okay, so I've run the wire down. You can see here, and I've unplugged the cigarette lighter. Here we need to tap into that orange wire that's right behind there. You can kind of see it there. That's the 12 volt power. What I'll use here is I'll use these quick connects from Dorman. The quick splices is what they're called. They're good for 14 to 18 gauge. Since it's just a signal wire, I'm not too worried about it. All right, we've got our accessory run. All we have left is the dimmer and the, what are these two? These are the power antenna and the rear camera positive that I kind of left out here. Since I don't have either of them hooked up right now, I'm just gonna put them to the side. So let me just cap this one off. All right, that way we can come back to them later if we want. So really all that's left is this dimmer, and I'm not exactly sure what to plug it into. It should go to an orange wire. And what I think I'm going to do is run it to, I need to do some testing, but I think I'm going to run it down here to the four-wheel drive switch. There's an orange wire right here for the four-wheel drive switch that I think is for the illumination. So I'll need to test that. But before I do that, let's go ahead and get this installed real quick and just see if everything's working. So let me do that now. Okay, for those of you that want to see, we'll go ahead and plug this in. Keep in mind the battery is disconnected right now. It's probably good practice. So we'll plug the wiring loom in. There, it clicked in. We will plug in our antenna right here. And that is done. We are not going to need the XM radio, so we'll leave that off. I'm going to go ahead and plug this in here, and then we'll just run a quick test, make sure everything's working. So let me go plug the battery in. All right, so I've got the power hooked up, the battery hooked back up. Let's give it a test here and see what she does. Looks like she's booting up. And keep in mind, this is the first time it's booting, so it's going to take a little bit. It's got a mode where it goes to sleep after this. So this is the first time it's booting. There we go. Let's see if we've got any. Okay. I'm going to leave it here. I'm not going to put any music on because I don't want this to get demonetized or anything because of music, but it sounds like all my speakers are working. So I think we are good there. So let's go ahead and see if we can figure out this illumination. I'm going to do that next. All right, so actually I almost forgot. I got to put this microphone in, so I'm going to install that now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it up here on the A-pillar, right here in this location right here. And we're just going to run the wire behind this and then down behind this deal all the way down to right here. There's a little gap and we'll get in behind the dash there. All right, so I got the microphone wired up into here and it's all plugged in. One last thing we need to do is we need to get the old GPS module installed. I'm going to put it just right here on the top of this tray that's on the deal, and the reason for that is I actually have another device that's going to go up here, and that's for a later video. So once that's all done, this will look pretty clean. Okay, everything's plugged in and ready to go. We're just going to clean up all the wiring here with some zip ties and put her all back together. I'll go ahead and stick the radio in and stick it in the dash, and we'll give her a test. Alright guys, there we go. It's all set up. Seems to be working just fine. I've tested the audio. The radio's working fine. Good reception. Also tested the phone, and the hands-free is all working just fine. Google Maps is working great with the GPS is all hooked up, so that's wonderful. You can go to Google Play Store and download any applications that you want to download. YouTube's working, Netflix, all that other stuff. And interesting enough, you don't even have to be in park to watch a video, so that's kind of cool. So anyway, there you go. That's the installation of the Atoto A6 performance model. And it took about a half day to install, and it's working just great. So listen guys, if you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.